Ready, set, secure. Automation and orchestration, endpoint detection and response, network visibility, cloud, containers, DevSecOps, threat intelligence, security platforms. Wondering how to keep up with all the latest security products and trends while still keeping your organization safe? Then stick around to listen to Ready, Set, Secure, the Set Solutions Podcast.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 35 of Ready, Set, Secure, Set Solutions live stream and podcast. It's been a little while since we've been here. Sorry for the delay. Just had a bunch of stuff going on, but really thank you very much for coming back and joining us again. I am Michael Farnham, CTO here at Set Solutions. As always, just not in studio. Justin Hutchins, AKA Hutch, is joining us from a undisclosed bunker. How you doing, Hutch?
Good. Good to be here.
Sorry you can't join us, but at least you're getting to be on the live stream. And back with us again, Greg Porterfield with Set Solutions, one of our senior consultants. There you go. Professional services guy, does all kinds of cool stuff. So he's joined us again. Thank you very much, Greg.
Happy to be here.
Y'all have heard me many times talk about his really cool blog series. So thank you for doing that on his journey for OSCP. So doing all kinds of cool stuff with that. So thanks for joining us.
This is the man, the myth, and the legend.
The man, the myth, and the legend. And so special guest star today, though, Mr. Cody Wheat AKA Wheatley. How you doing, Wheatley?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wheatley's joining us here because he is a CTF master. We're going to be talking about capture the flags today. And we wanted to bring him on to talk about some of his exploits, how he got into CTFs, all that good stuff. So appreciate you joining us. Before we get into that main segment, though, we do have a few little things we want to talk about. So getting into the Set Solutions segment today. First thing, we were going to do the live in-person meeting out in Vegas for or the conference for Splunk.conf. And that is now virtual. So if you were going to join us in any of our stuff we were going to do out there, or if you were just going to, in general, go to Vegas for .conf, know if you haven't heard the news that it is virtual. So that's getting moved around, just kind of giving that as a general update. Unfortunately, we're not going to do all the stuff we were going to do out in Vegas, but kind of makes sense. This is what's going on in the world. This whole live stream and podcast that we're talking about is around our Capture the Flag coming in October. So October, if you've been in this industry for any length of time, you know October Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we are doing a CTF. We started that last year, and we're doing another one this year. We are going to do those until somebody tells us to stop, pretty much, because they're a lot of fun, a lot of work, but a lot of fun. So go, you see the address down there. If you're on the live stream, if you're on the podcast, if you're listening to this on the podcast, we'll put it in the show notes. But essentially, ctf.setsolutions.com, and you can register. And starting in beginning first week of October, you'll be able to join in. So go register for that. We've got some cool sponsors and some cool prizes, weekly prizes for you to win. So please join us on that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hutch and Greg and others on our team have been the ones who've been running, getting that built. So also baseball games. So next Wednesday, we've got baseball game down here in Houston and for the Astros, and we do have one up in Dallas on the same day for the Rangers. So if you need to if you want to go to those, you want to talk to your Set Solutions account manager, please do. We've got a few open seats left, so try to join us on that. And then near and dear to my heart, I've talked about it a couple of times. Houston Security Conference, aka HuSecCon, is happening in just over 2 weeks. Everybody's that's planning it is kind of stressed out, including me, but it's coming up soon. We are going to do a live event October 6th and 7th down here in Houston. So VIP sales, tickets are gone now, but if you want to get a regular attendee ticket, please go out to HoustonSecCon.org and get your ticket. That's coming up pretty soon, and then sales will be gone very soon. And that's going to be a live event. Like I said, down here in Houston, we will require masks and that kind of stuff at that event. We want to keep everybody safe, but we're doing a live event. Going to have a lot of good speakers for that. So now's the time, after we do all of that, that we change over to our news segment. So we're going to spend some time on some articles that people have come up with here and go through them, give about 5 minutes each, and then we'll get into the news or the regular segment later. So real quick, first of all, Hutch is going to be talking about how hackers approach unhappy workers to be accomplices. So that ought to be a pretty interesting one. I think we've talked about that kind of a couple of times where they're approaching people to throw in ransomware in some of their environments. I think Tesla was one that almost got hit with that. Then I'm going to be talking about the Azure zero-day flaws in the OMI software for some of their Linux boxes that Microsoft put out there. Kind of highlights some supply chain risks. That's a pretty interesting one. And then Greg is going to be going over the AT&T. They lost $200 million in 7 years to illegal phone unlocking schemes. So that would be pretty cool. Yeah, if you do say so yourself. Mm-hmm. All right. So Hutch, why don't you bring us into your article and tell us what you thought about it, and we'll discuss.
Certainly. So I think around the industry, there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of discussions recently of insider threat involvement, especially with some of the recent ransomware attacks. I know that we actually talked about this on our last podcast when we discussed cyber insurance and how this was beginning to be an emerging trend. So when I saw this article, I absolutely jumped on it and had to read it about a journalist who was approached by a ransomware group in order to become the entry vector for the ransomware attack for his organization. And because he was approached on this and because of his interest in journalism, he decided to see how deep the rabbit hole went and just kind of go with it and see what happened. And as the discussions evolved, they ultimately came up with an agreement that he would get 40% of a $1 million ransom in the event that he did successfully execute and the ransom was paid. And for me, that's really eye-opening, and it should be for every executive, every senior level manager out there, because how many organizations, how many senior managers can really say confidently that you don't have a person in your organization that wouldn't sell you out in a second for a immediate $400,000 payment?
Yeah, I would like to say somebody could say that, but that's a lot of money. I'm not going to be idealistic and go, nobody would ever do that. No, yeah, that's a huge payment.
I think what's interesting about that,
Sure.
when you think about these like ransomware gangs, like how much they operate, especially if you're in the security industry, like they really care about their reputation. So it's easy to think like, oh, like they're not going to pay that person at the end, but they might, because they really do care about their reputation.
They do. No, it's a
business, right?
It really is. It's a business model. I mean, you've got to have a good reputation. I mean, any of these ransomware gangs that they are starting to get bad reputations in some places, because they'll say, oh, well, we've got your info, give us the money, we'll give you your keys. And then they're like, oh, no, pay us again, or pay us to unlock and then pay us to keep it all secret because we've got all your data. People start, I mean, they're going to start pushing back, but somebody like that to be able to get in there, and $400,000 is a drop in the bucket when you're asking for, $15 million or $4 million or whatever that is to get it back. So, no, I think
you also have to think about the fact that it probably isn't that hard to make something like this look like an accident. I mean, the phishing email comes in your mailbox and you're just the klutz that accidentally clicked on it. That's not immediately, from the perception of others, a criminal activity. So it seems like it could very possibly be done by people with very little concern of repercussions or consequences.
Oh, yeah, and they give you all the tools that you would need. They tell you about how to access secure communication through like talks and stuff of that nature. So, I mean, they want to support you.
Yeah.
It also elevates the potential repercussions too. You go from making a simple mistake to now your conspiracy. Starts getting real interesting if they ever do make the tie.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it wouldn't work out well for you if they found out.
No, well, I mean, but yeah, if they never do, so what's the worst that's going to happen to you? Well, you might get fired, but you also probably just have to go do some more security awareness training, and everything's fine. I'll take $400,000 to go do an hour's worth of security awareness training. Not really.
It's
I'm not
more.
saying I'm gonna do this.
It's morality, people. Don't sell out your company for $400,000.
Yeah, I would think even in today's world where people are a little even more disillusioned with some of their jobs and they're looking for something else to do because they don't want to work in a certain place. I would think it's even more. People are even more susceptible to it today than they ever have been, just with the current environment of what the pandemic has done to us and everything else, and people running all over the place and trying to change jobs. Hey, why not get an extra 400 when I can't even? I'm looking at not being able to make my rent next week. I mean, it's scary.
And if you're working from home, it's a lot easier to take a call from a ransomware group than it is if you're sitting in an office next to your coworkers.
Yeah, you don't have to talk in code when you're sitting at the house, right? It's like trying to do a job interview when you're at your office.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, I can make that meeting next week. Yeah. Oh man, scary stuff. All right, well, let's again. Hutch loves to depress us on these things, Wheatley, by the way. Hutch scares us all. So, okay. So next one, Azure has, and forgive me, everybody, I was out of the office last week, so I know this is a little bit old news, but I did want to highlight it. I've got some personal reasons kind of for highlighting this, or at least some ideals in my head. So Azure had a 0-day flaw in their OMI, Open Management Interface, or infrastructure. I mean, in Azure on Linux, in their Linux distribution in Azure, and there's some weird things that happen with it. I mean, I know multiple people have highlighted this already. I listened to a podcast this morning talking about it as well when I was coming into work. The two weird things are that, one, Azure puts OMI out on all these Linux boxes, and even I think on some on-premise different boxes with Microsoft's managing, and didn't tell anybody, first of all, that it was on those boxes. So if you weren't really looking, you didn't know that that OMI was installed in your box. Second, it had about 4 different vulnerabilities that were pretty high vulnerabilities. They call it, since OMI, they called it, oh my God. It's pretty funny, actually. But the company that found it, cloud infrastructure security firm Wiz, found it. And then Microsoft was telling everybody that if you've got this, then you have to go patch it yourself. We're not going to go patch it for you. One, you may not even known it was there. And then when you did know it was there, you had to go patch it all yourself. So the reason I'm bringing this one up, again, I think a lot of people have highlighted this and brought it up in different podcasts and articles and everything else. The reason I'm bringing it up is because I've just got a little bit of a bee in my bonnet for Microsoft right now when it comes to how they're handling security and how they're putting all of this time and effort into building security tools, instead of taking the time to actually put all the resources they can into securing Microsoft infrastructure that pretty much runs about 90% of the world. So, and even if you had an E5 license and all of Microsoft security tools, you would not, none of that would really fix this vulnerability anyway. So it's, I say this at my own risk and trepidation because I get a little aggravated about this stuff, but Microsoft's a massive entity, but I just keep hearing a lot of discussion about this, go get our E5 license. And it makes a lot of sense from a perspective of a CFO to go put all your resources in something that you may already own and maybe not get other tools. But now what you're doing is buying security products from a company who is building security products to protect you from the very vulnerabilities that they introduced in the first place. So it's kind of this really weird little circular thing going on right now. And you can say we're kind of self-serving, or I am, by saying this, because we are, yes, a cybersecurity product VAR, and Microsoft is not a partner that we work with and all that. And that's fine if you want to say that. But I got a little bit of a bee in my bonnet on this, and I'll open it up to the group here to talk about it, but I just kind of want to get that off my chest a little bit. So anybody else want to say anything to get themselves in trouble? Because I'm open for it.
I would add that Microsoft did try and kind of meet us halfway as of yesterday.
Yeah.
They are patching all the platform as a service stuff they offer, but anything that you've enabled, automation or configuration on, like, you've got to go do that yourself still.
Yeah.
But it is definitely a weird thing in that cycle. But I also think it's a weird line to walk when you're trying to do like disclosures of those kinds of vulnerabilities, especially because this is an open source project.
Yeah.
There was essentially a little red flag that went up more than a month ago on August 11th that told people that there was a security issue in that product, because it was hosted on GitHub and you could see those commit, comments, but they just tried to, fly it under the radar for as long as possible, because what else are you going to do?
Yeah, I think can we also talk about how weird the future is? Like, I wish I could go back to myself 10 years ago and tell myself that we were going to be dealing with severe vulnerabilities in open source agents that were sitting on Linux boxes hosted by Microsoft.
Amen. I agree.
I think it also highlights the once again, something that we were talking about on our last podcast, which is just the complexity of attribution when it comes to the cloud and that kind of shared security responsibility model. And at the end of the day, who does it fall on if somebody gets breached as a result of agents that ultimately weren't even installed by them, but rather the hosting provider? But it's their responsibility supposedly to patch. So I think it's just another case of where this is getting extremely complicated. And
yeah, we've all been taught this security, to your point, the security shared responsibility model. Cloud does their stuff, we do our stuff, applications do their stuff. It gets a little blurred when you get into serverless and platform and all of that stuff. Okay, I get that. But it's like, who's checking Microsoft on this? And they don't allow you to go hit their stuff. So you've got to stay within your boundaries, right? So do we have audit rights in Azure? I guess if you're big enough, maybe they'll give it to you, but contractually, nobody's going to have that except to the big beasts or the government or something like that. So it's a really weird quagmire. I've just, the more and more I deal with this issue, the more and more I get older I get, the less idealistic I get, but I find that I'm being pretty idealistic about this whole arena with Microsoft being so into the security sphere right now. And then seeing things like this, where a ton of people are going on Azure. And then how are you supposed to have faith in that whole shared responsibility model when you can't do anything about it if it does happen? Basically, it's just frustrating. Greg, I don't know if you got anything to.
I think we're going to keep seeing some challenges as they grow. The concern that I saw with this one more than anything else was what it affected most, and it was their monitoring and automation platform, which need to be running. It needs to be there. We don't want to discourage folks from using it, and yet that's the vulnerability point. So that's a bit of a concern, and it will probably continue to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, we beat that one to death. I'll wait for my call from Microsoft to go into jail or something like that. But in any case, all right, Greg, you are up next, sir.
So it wasn't intentional, but this one kind of dovetails pretty nice with Hutch's article.
Well, you should have told me that. I changed the orders.
So the kind of short version is AT&T kind of convoluted. Some people were put in jail for about 12 years because they ran a 7-year scheme unlocking more than 1 million phones, and that caused some problems. As I got into it, the first part was kind of interesting. They effectively automated the process to unlock, and they needed AT&T credentials to make that work. So they went after people at the help centers that actually have the power to do this. And they got a hold of scripts and built scripts and tools. And over the course of some years, were executing this. The interesting thing to me was that it took them a long time to figure this out. What should have been kind of easy logging, easy wins that we talk about from other things, of they had 3 people that were firing off unlocks at milliseconds apart when it should have been a tool that required manual effort. Someone should have found that long before 7 years. But it is interesting that this was going on, and then kind of the result of it. So,
it definitely does dovetail really well. I mean, just the thing that surprised me about this is the number of people. How many did they have ultimately that conspired?
There are 3 that were brought charges, and AT&T is suing separately. And there's up to 50 unnamed people that they're still working on.
I mean, that's just a massive number of people to think that eventually is not. I mean, it just, once you get past 1, I mean, your odds go up considerably that somebody's going to talk, right? So it's amazing that they were able to carry it out this long. That was the thing that surprised me the most about it.
Yeah, one thing I wasn't real clear on, which admittedly I did kind of just I quickly reviewed this one, but when it was referring to unlocked devices, are we talking about like physically unlocking the actual mobile device itself, or are we talking about unlocked in the sense of being able to reassign the service and
it's the carrier lock,
SIM swapping attacks? Okay. Yeah, and I think that makes more sense. So yeah, and to your point, I think that the real troubling thing here is just the collusion, the problem of insider threat. I think is what we're seeing is an increasing theme across the board.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all 3 of our articles. Thank you, Greg, for bringing that one to us. And now we are going to switch over to our main segment. So that main segment being all about CTFs. So as we talked about earlier, Capture the Flag, we are doing our annual CTF for October, Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And we'll be doing it for 4 weeks. And then each week we'll have different winners. All the rules are out on the site. When you go register, you can go read all those. But the reason we wanted, or kind of 2 or 3 things we want to talk about, and like I said, that's why we wanted to bring Wheatley in, is Wheatley, you have been doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, or I can let you talk about it in general, but you've been doing CTFs a little bit, and I believe you participated in our CTF last year and made quite a splash in there. So Hutch said, why don't we bring Wheatley in and let's talk about what he likes about CTFs, how he got into them. Maybe just kind of give us an overview of how you approach them. Anything else you want to talk about? We're pretty open. So why don't you start from there? What kind of got you into CTFs?
Well, what got me into CTFs was I got hacked. A very young me decided I was going to try and build a website out of PHP, PHP version 4 at the time. So that kind of gives you an idea of how long ago this was. And I think it was online for maybe 2 days, and suddenly my website was a phishing page for a Canadian bank. But thankfully, the guy from my hosting provider who called me and told me I wasn't being arrested was nice enough to kind of walk me through the problem, to tell me about a remote file inclusion vulnerability that was very blatant, in my young coding days. And he pointed me to a website called Hack This Site. I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's been around forever. And it allowed me to explore that vulnerability. I had already had kind of a budding interest in security for wireless hacking and stuff, but that kind of blew the doors off, and I haven't stopped playing them since.
Awesome. So you, I know there's Hack This Site, there's Damn Vulnerable Web App, there's Hack the Box, Try Hack. Yeah, there's several of those. So you participate in those. Those are kind of on demand, right? Or I guess Damn Vulnerable Web App, you kind of have to spin up your own version. I don't know if there's an online version of it sitting out there, but you kind of move from those to actually looking for real CTFs that are maybe limited time frame, or do you still do both, or what do you like to do now?
I still do both, and some people draw the line and call anything that is ongoing a war game and not a CTF. I really don't make that distinction. But yeah, I still readily play, Hack the Box, and I still do pen tester labs and things like that. But I really do enjoy the shorter competitions now, or the yearly ones like Sans Holiday Hack Challenge. Kind of getting to a point where I'm stepping back to be more of, I don't know, a mentor type role. Like I want to help other people. It's just becoming more enjoyable for me. But yeah, I try and get my hands into everything.
I think one of the most amazing things about your story is that you found a hosting provider that gave you that level of support to talk you through hacks and stuff whenever something happened.
Yeah, I don't know if he was supposed to do that, but it would be interesting to find that guy and be like, hey, that 10-minute conversation we had when I was, 19, 20, like spawned an entire career.
Set you down a path. Yeah, no kidding. So I guess one other thing that I wanted to cover was we probably have listeners that are considering doing the CTF and maybe have never done one before. What kind of recommendations would you give to somebody who's looking to get into CTFs as far as preparing those baseline skills or anything that they can do to get ready for it?
If you've got time to prepare, there are some resources out there that are really great. You can go through the OWASP top 10, which will give you a solid foundation when you're talking about, web app pen testing or something of that nature. There's 100 different things. If you're brand new to Linux, maybe go do over the wire challenges. There's one specifically called Bandit that kind of walks you through some basic Linux enumeration and like moving around the file system and slowly ramps into security stuff. That stuff's really great. But the biggest one is just start. Start and take notes. Like the best way to learn is just to dive in. Like I understand it could be kind of intimidating sometimes, but the sooner you start to build that catalog of knowledge, the sooner you're going to be good at it.
Great advice.
Sorry guys, we had a little bit of background going on here. Hopefully didn't pick too much of that up. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is our CTF that we've got going on. So we are doing stuff a little bit differently. So one of the things I do want to show, I'm not going to show the back of this coin. We've already had a discussion about this. But at HughesCon, we are going to be giving away these coins. I'm not going to show you the back. But that's kind of a preview. We're going to be giving away some of these coins. And this is going to be kind of a unique, you're going to have a unique ability here to get to one of our flags at our CTF using this coin. If you're at HughesCon, you go to Set Solutions booth. So that's one thing we're doing differently this year is we're kind of giving away a coin to capture one of the flags. But Hutch, Greg, why don't y'all talk about some of the differences that we're doing or what we're doing differently than we did last year with our CTF? Maybe y'all can summarize that for us.
I would say that for probably the first thing you're going to notice when you access the site is that this year we went with a very targeted theme. Last year was kind of very general in our approach, but this year we decided to go with Space Force and kind of playing with the whole Netflix series with Steve Carell. And personally, that series really appealed to me a lot just because I came from Air Force Space Command in a prior life and have worked with a lot of people who are now in Space Force. So watching the series was absolutely hilarious. But even for people that don't have the background, I think it's definitely worth watching. So we kind of took that theme and played with the idea of, and it also played into the fact that we're a Houston-based company. We are obviously close proximity to NASA, and we have some marketing and branding around space anyway. So we thought that it would be a fun route to go.
And it's from a rules standpoint, what are we doing a little bit different this year?
So rules, we have eliminated our team approach and are making it an individual CTF. We found that last year we were doing, so similar to last year, we're doing prizes again, but last year we were doing prizes based on individual performance, but with a team element to it. And unfortunately, it becomes a lot harder to evaluate people on individual performance when they're within the context of a team where they may not have opportunities to execute on challenges because somebody else in their team already did. So obviously still encourage people to have the social element, enjoy it, communicate, have sidebars with your friends as much as you want while doing this. But ultimately, it's going to come down to individual registration and individual performance. We got some really cool prizes this year, everything from an Oculus Quest, a drone, some iPad, iWatch, earbuds, so earpods. So yeah, definitely worth it.
I don't know, something Apple makes.
Some cool prizes though. What are you thinking?
I think the other two things that are probably the biggest difference from last year, other than I think we get to have more fun putting the challenges together and wrapping the story, is they're relatively minor, but the way that hints are working this year, which is to say they're not, and dynamic scoring. So the dynamic scoring is cool. It makes it so that we don't have to really worry about trying to figure out how to categorize or figure out how easy or hard something is. The audience and the game players themselves will basically determine the score by how many people actually solve it, which kind of introduces an interesting element. The lack of hints means we have to be more creative when how we name things, and it makes things a little bit more challenging, but also makes it levels the playing field pretty well.
Yeah, I think, and to give some background on that, we did notice that we had some participants last year the way that the hints work is you get hints based on spending points that you have, and we found that people were registering dummy accounts in order to spend points on those, get access to the hints, and then use those. So we figured we could we just like Greg said, level the playing field, make sure that the people that are playing fairly have the same level of access and same information available to them as people that would otherwise do that.
It never even occurred to me to register twice for the hint.
Well, it reminds me of what one of the first CTFs that they had at DerbyCon. They didn't, that was all on-prem. They had a whole conference room set aside and locked, but they did not put it in the rules that you could not go physically attack. So somebody picked a lock, because this is a place with a whole bunch of lock picks, got into the room, started plugging directly into the servers, and they called them in there like, you can't do that. And they're like, show me on the rules where it says we can't do this. So they had to pick. It's like that's what these people do.
The hacker mindset. Yep.
Oh man, it's amazing.
This is why the rules say you can't hack the game infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So I appreciate y'all running through that. So I think I'm going to come back to you, Wheatley. So what do you, as a general discussion topic, how do you see CTFs as a way to build skills? I mean, it's a gamification. Everybody likes gamification of being able to do whatever they do, makes it fun. But I mean, do you see it as a pretty legitimate skill builder?
Yeah, I see it as one of the better ones, really, when it comes to cybersecurity. It solves this problem that I think otherwise would be really difficult to approach, and that's the you don't know what you don't know problem. It kind of introduces you to technologies and tools that you otherwise wouldn't have a reason to run across, in your day-to-day work. So it just exposes you to all those things.
Gotcha. Yep. I see every year, especially at HUSECOM, but at other places too, I'll see people they'll bring their kids in with them, and you'll see, daughter, son, and father, mother, or whoever, just coming in there and, building it at somebody who hasn't done this as a career, and they're starting up even at a very young age. And I've seen kids move up. I mean, one of the guys that used to do one of the CTFs I was involved in was probably 19 when he started, and just kind of, built from there. And now you're seeing them starting even younger. And that it's not only a skill builder, but a career builder, right? Because they get a passion for solving puzzles. And especially in this, if they've had that all their life, and then now they're doing it in a CTF mindset, and now all of a sudden they see there's this whole career field that they can do this for a living.
Right. I think as an industry, we're recognizing the need to kind of get that interest at an earlier age than we currently do. Because really it's kind of been shown that those interests that you have when you're in middle school, right at the beginning of high school, kind of stick for a while. And if you don't have that interest, it just doesn't build. And so people like Sands and the Holiday Hack Challenge do a really good job at really gamifying something so it's interesting on like a visual level for like really young kids. So it looks like, your little dude running around a map, solving challenges.
Yeah.
But there's all those security practices underneath it that are just kind of snuck in.
Yeah, appealing visuals. Isn't that how we appeal to executives too? Flashy lights and colors.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. I like pretty graphs, pretty colors.
There's also the safe space side to a CTF of, especially with the way the laws are in different places, it can be really tricky and really easy to cross the line from trying to learn something legitimately to kind of doing something by accident. The platforms, whether it's, Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, pick your platform, they're standing up every few days now. They give a safe space to operate that is sanctioned. People don't have to pick a target and hope that they're not doing something illegal. It's legit. You can't get in trouble for doing it. You can learn. If you're like me, you might be practicing for things that need to be done in other places. You don't really want to be running exploits on other people's stuff until you've seen it a few times. And building out the labs to do some of this can be really tricky. So crowdsourcing environments like that is very, very powerful.
So we're going from war games to Ready Player One, basically,
Yeah,
right? From, if you think about it from a movie standpoint, we're all geeks, we get it, right? But that's the kind of, you're getting in trouble. There wasn't a place to do that. He was trying to play games, but he managed not to play games. But you're exactly right. Now you can do this stuff, and the more these get built by people such as yourself who are trying to make it as realistic as possible. I know early on, you could have some pretty simple challenges that really didn't give you a good real world environment to play in, but now they're getting more and more realistic where that you can get real training with it. Mm-hmm. And then I've seen people who progress from that to go to like some of the bug bounty programs. Yep. And that way, you're actually getting paid for that, but that's a really good, and some of those programs even have beginner levels, kind of like where you're not getting paid, but it's almost like get a reputation, get a score, and you find some of these smaller bugs and you get good, and then you say, okay, I'm really good at this. So then you can start getting paid for that stuff. And that's a legitimate career path. That'll be around for a really long time. So
yeah, it's a tough one to make a full-time living off of. But that being said, the people that are the best at it, like there are people that make in the millions just by doing bug bounties. Some of these that are well over $100,000 for some of these local exploits and like the pwn to own stuff and stuff like that. Some of the payout for those is crazy.
Well, Apple paid out like $200,000 last year. That researcher worked for 6 months to figure that out. And it was a marvelous exploit, but that's a long time to be without income while it works these out.
Yeah. No, but eventually we're just going to find all the bugs, so we won't. All this will go away. Though,
sure,
right?
We will.
Yeah. You seem doubtful.
Till the
as
next
long as we
OMI.
have developers, we will have bugs.
Correct. What was that, Wheatley?
I said till the next OMI patch gets pushed anyway.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Patch it and then introduce 3 more bugs.
That was the printers. Oh
gosh, yeah. Gosh. Well, guys, thank you very much. This has been great discussion. Again, go out to ctf.setsolutions.com and get registered. Let's have some fun in October. I think we have more and more people hitting it. It'll be a lot of fun. Teach some stuff. Get your kids involved. If they've never played with one of these, let them see what it's like. I think it'll be a lot. And then you got some cool prizes available. So, all right. Well, we are going to call episode 35 a done deal. Cody Wheat AKA Wheatley, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a good one and play more CTFs.
That's right. All right. Appreciate it. Greg, say your goodbyes.
thanks for having me back. And oh yeah, I have a blog this week.
Oh, I was just going to mention that. So he's got a blog coming out. I just got it to review. So probably in the next couple of weeks, it'll be coming out. But go out to our blog. You see the link there, but just setsolutions.com/blog. You can read all of Greg's stuff that he's had before. And this new one is going to be kind of outside the series, right?
Yep. This one's about Ctfs.
Yeah.
It's another kind of, we're going to keep this theme going as long as we can.
Yep. Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for doing that. Hutch, got any parting wisdom for us?
Sure. Wheatley, thanks for joining. It was great to have you on and to have you share your wisdom. Greg, you've been doing awesome as far as helping with building out the CTF. So really appreciate all the effort you put into it. And Michael.
You should say sorry for making fun of executives. That's all right. I'm used to it. I chose my career path.
That's what I'm here for.
All right. Well, thanks again, Wheatley. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Hutch. Thanks for everybody for joining us for episode 35. We hopefully will see you in a couple of weeks after HUSECCon, because I'm going to be very busy before then. So, but again, if you can join us there, if you're down in Houston, go get your tickets. And we will see you on episode 30. Oh, there's magically Lauren makes the URL appear. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that. All right, everybody. See you on episode 36. Thanks again.
Thank you.